Hey, what is going on, guys? Welcome back to another PS4 tutorial. So in this one, we're going to be looking at how you can run PS1, PSP, PS2 games, technically also Sega Saturn games, on your jailbreakable PS4. Now, this is possible because Sony sells specific PS1, PSP, PS2 games on the PlayStation Store, and they come bundled with an emulator that Sony has created to run those games well on the PS4. Now, what we've been able to do is dump those particular games that have that emulator bundled in, and we can basically use that emulator and repackage it with any other PS1, PSP, or PS2 game that we want to try and run on our PS4, and we can attempt to run it. Now, not all of the games are going to work because the emulator might require certain tweaks in order to get it working on specific games, but it does work on the majority of at least PS1 and PS2 games that you can run on the PS4. Now, there are, of course, websites that you can go to that already have these games converted, and you can run them on your PS4. You can just download the package file to a USB drive and install it and run it. Of course, I can't show you what websites to go to download those here in this video. So instead, I'm going to show you how you can convert the raw ISO files for those games, the ROMs, how you can convert them to run on the PS4. So first thing we're going to do is switch on over to the computer. And there's a bunch of conversion tools that have been created that will convert the ROM, the bin file, or the ISO file for the game into a package file that will be bundled in with the emulator to run it on the PS4. So there's a Sega Saturn version here, which I'm not really going to go too much into. It basically works the same as the others. And then we've got a PSP version, PS1 version, and PS2 version. So if we take a look at the PSP version first, we'll run PSP FPKG. This is from Jabu. Most of the tools here are from Jabu. So we're going to run these, and I do have a few games available here. So I've got a PSP game in this folder, Call of Duty Roads to Victory, and there is the ISO file for this PSP game. So all I need to do is select that ISO file here by clicking select, and I'll select Call of Duty Roads to Victory, select the ISO file, click open, and it gets loaded in here. And then all I have to do is click create fake package, and I'll just select the desktop as the location I'm going to save the package file to right now. And all I have to do is click OK, and that will generate the package file for our PSP game. But there it is right there, package created, click OK, and there we go. We now have our package file right here for the game. Okay, so now we're going to do PlayStation 1. So we're going to use the program PSX FPKG from Jabu. We're going to open up this program. Now, the reason why I like this program, even though it's an older program, it doesn't use maybe the most up-to-date version of the emulator, which could cause some problems. Some of the newer versions will support newer versions of the emulator, which might have better compatibility. But this tool supports different audio formats, so it'll automatically convert it to a TOC file for you. You don't have to do that manually like you do in other programs, so it makes it easier. And on top of that, it also supports multi-disc games, which a lot of the other programs do not. So that is why we're going to be using this program here. So what we want to do, first of all, I've got a game. So if I go to Games, PS1, we've got Resident Evil 2. This is a multi-disc game plus a multi-track game as well. So we're going to add this in. Now, Resident Evil 2, maybe not the best example because typically you would maybe just build two package files, one for Leon, one for Claire for each disc. So just have each disc as a separate package. But you can also combine them all into one package, and you can swap them in the actual emulator itself, which is what we're going to do. So if we select disk 1 by clicking select, we can go to our Resident Evil 2 folder, select the first CUE file. We'll open that up, and that adds the first disk in there. And I think it's merging the bin files automatically, so that's done. And then we can increase this to 2 disks and select the next disk, which is going to be disk2.cue. And again, I think it will merge these two bin files into one, and then we should be good. So from here, we can select our icon, our Resident Evil 2 icon, and then we can create the package file. Now, you can also add additional configs. If you go to game config, there's a few additional options here. So some of the options, skip boot logo is on by default. That'll get you into the game faster without showing you that iconic PlayStation 1 boot up animation. So, it's up to you whether you want to have that on or not. And then you've also got emulate analog sticks. So if the game did not originally support analog sticks, you can emulate the analog sticks, which will just map the D-pad to the analog sticks, so you'll be able to use them. And then you can also force 60 Hz if it is a PAL version of the game that normally runs at 50 Hz. You can force it to run at 60 Hz. And then you can also add a custom Lua script, which can be used for enabling widescreen support or cheats, as well as the text files, which are for config files for the emulator, so you can adjust the emulator settings. So you've got a few options there. One of the issues with Resident Evil 2, for example, is that without any custom config, some of the cutscenes do not play. It just skips them. So if we go to where the converter is originally posted here on PSX Place, the discussion section in here is a great way to find configs. You can see here there's like multiple pages, 37 pages of replies, and a lot of people are posting the correct configs for specific games in the replies. So you can look through the replies, see if your game is in there, and somebody's probably posted a bunch of, details on how to enable widescreen support, how to enable cheats maybe, how to, fix particular issues that the game has, any graphical bugs. And you'll find the same for like the PS2 version and the PSP version. You'll find a lot of good information in the replies in the discussion section. So I definitely recommend checking that out. Also, there's the PS1 Classics emulator compatibility list. You can go to the discussion section here, and there's a few configs that are posted. Conveniently, Resident Evil 2 is one of the ones here. So I can take this config file here for Resident Evil 2 Remake, and I can just copy this. So this is for the USA version, which is the version I have, I think. So I can just create a new notepad document here on my computer that has that config added. And then I'll just save this to the Resident Evil 2 folder. And I'll just call this, I don't know, config.txt. And there we go, that should be done. And then I can just select that config here in the program. So config.txt, I'll open that up. So it'll use those settings with the emulator so that it will fix the cutscene problem that this game has. And then I can create the fake package file. That's just an example of how you can kind of configure the emulator and customize it. You don't have to do that in a lot of cases. You can just add the ISO file or add the bin file and generate the package, and that's it. But if you want a bit more fine-grained control over the emulator, if you want to tweak the settings, that is how you can do it. Okay, so now we have that file generated as well. We've got our fake package for Resident Evil 2. Now, in some circumstances, when you get a PS1 game, like this Crash Bandicoot version, you might only get the bin file. It might not give you the CUE file that is required. Pretty much all of these converters require you to have the .cue file in order for it to correctly build the package. So if you downloaded one that just has the bin file and not the CUE file, you can use a program like ImageBurn to create the CUE file for you. So if I open up ImageBurn on my computer, I'll leave it linked down in the description. You can go to Tools and then create a CUE file. If you select that option, you can drag and drop the bin file for the game in here, and then you can just click OK, and then output the CUE file, click OK, and now you have generated a CUE file for that particular game. And then you should be able to use the converter now to open that CUE file and generate the fake package. So if we go to our Crash Bandicoot, take that CUE file we generated, and then obviously I'll add the cover image in as well. And then we can create fake package, save it to our desktop, and that should be it. There we go, fake package created. And we now have our fake package version of Crash Bandicoot. So that is how you fix the issue if you don't have a CUE file with your game. Okay, so last but not least, we come to PlayStation 2. So we're going to be using PS2 FPKG again from Jabu. We're going to open this up. This is the most feature complete version of the tools that we have so far. So with this one, we're going to select our disc. So in my case, I've got a PS2 game here, God of War 2. So we're going to select that option and open. That gets it added in there. We'll select our icon, God of War cover icon. Is this God of War 2? Maybe it's the first God of War. I can't remember which one I downloaded. But anyway, from there, we're going to go and select our emulator. So there's two options. You can use Jack V2 or Rogue V1. I'm just going to select Jack V2 for this one. And there's multiple configs that you can select. So you can add your own custom config for the emulator or custom Lua script. And then you've got a bunch of other options in here. There's graphics settings. You can, up render. You can select 2x2 or none. Edge smoothing. So different upscaling techniques. You can also change the display mode if you want 4x3 or 16:9. You can select that. You can change the shader. You can add scan lines, and you can add widescreen patches if they're available. In this case, it looks like there are widescreen patches available, so I'll probably enable that there. And you also have remote play support, so you can select here the buttons that should be mapped on a PS Vita system while playing the game via remote play. So So if you want to play via remote play, you can set that up. And then there's also the option to add a PlayStation 2 memory card if you have a save that you've been using on another emulator or on your original PS2 and you have that file, you can select it here so that you'll have access to that save file. So with that, we can go ahead and create the fake package. Once again, I'll just select the desktop and build it there. Okay, process finished, click OK. And there we go, we now have our PS2 game package built. So we've got our PSP, 2 PS1 games, and our PS2 packages all built. So all we need to do is copy those over to a USB drive, making sure that USB drive is in exFAT format, preferably. And if we go into that USB drive, we can then copy all of our generated package files for our PSP, PS1, and PS2 games. Copy those over to the root of the USB. Okay, and once we have them all copied over to our USB drive, we're going to eject that USB and plug it into our PS4. Okay, so now all we need to do is head to Goal 10, Debug Settings, Package Installer, and install all of our package files here that we have generated. All right, here we go. Last one. Fully installed. And here we go. We've got Call of Duty, Roads to Victory, Resident Evil 2, Crash Bandicoot, and God of War. So what I'm going to do is just create a new folder. I'll add folder. Add to a new folder, and I guess I'll just call this like emulation or something, and I'll add them all into this folder. Just keep things organized. And here we go. So we've got our emulation folder. So let's try our PS2 game first, God of War. See how this runs. Sony Computer Entertainment Europe presents God of War. There is new game, and as you can see, the game is working as expected.
The gods of Olympus have abandoned me.
We've got the cutscene playing. Looks like we're all good. Don't know if I can skip the cutscene to actually get into some gameplay, but I mean, it looks like it's working fine. So we'll go ahead and try the next one. So close out of this one, and we'll load. Let's do Call of Duty Roads to Victory, a PSP game. Now, PSP compatibility is normally not the best. Press start to play. Although I think it has improved with some of the newer versions of the emulator. And yep, there we go. We've got the game loaded here. You can do new campaign, autosave disabled, whatever. Got missions. And you can see we've got the game loaded up here. So that game appears to be running as well. And now we will go and try, let's do Resident Evil 2, our PS1 game. So we enabled the skip boot logos, so we shouldn't get the normal PlayStation 1 boot logo, which is kind of a shame because that's an iconic sound. But anyway, we're going to go ahead and press start, so it should just jump straight into the game here. This game contains scenes of explicit violence and gore, and you don't get those warnings anymore. Okay, and we get our Capcom intro. I'm pretty sure these intros don't play if you don't have the custom config, like these cutscenes. So anyway, we'll create a new game just to see if it's working. It looks like it is working. So again, this is one of those games where if you don't add a custom config, a lot of the cutscenes do get skipped, and it will just jump straight into the game. Okay, there we go. So this cutscene is actually playing. So this is one of the cutscenes that would normally be skipped if we didn't add our custom emulator config file that we found there online. So it's definitely worth checking to see if there's any configs available, if there are any particular issues with your game, and you can just add that config in and fix those issues straight away, which is handy. So we'll go ahead and skip this. So you can see we've now loaded up into the game here. I have absolutely no idea how to play this game or work the controls. So it looks like I'm screwed already, but what you can do is you can press the options button and you can actually rewind the emulator. So I can go back to the start right here quite easily. And another thing is you can go to settings. You have the option to change visual presets. So you can do like retro classic or modern. You also have video options, so you can change it to, 4:3, native resolution, square pixels, or widescreen stretched. So you have a bunch of different options there. You can also see the controls. And you can change the disc. So if you remember this particular game, we had two discs. I put Claire's version and Leon's version in the same package file. So if I want to switch to Claire, I can just change disc and then choose disc 2, and it will load up disc 2 and then I can load Claire's version of the game instead of Leon's. Now, I could have just created 2 separate versions of the game, one for Leon's story, one for Claire's story, which I think is the same game, right? It's just you're playing as a different character for the most part. Yep, so we're now playing as Claire. So that's how you switch between the different discs using the emulator itself, which is pretty handy, especially for games that have multiple discs, where you get to a certain point in the story and it says, hey, you need to insert disc 2. You can just change disc to disc 2 and continue your playthrough, I believe. So yeah, that's basically it. And I guess I can just load up Crash Bandicoot for the last version here. And we'll see if this one's working. This is the one where we generated our own CUE file because the game did not come with a CUE file with it. So I had to generate one using image burn, but despite that, you'll see that it still works just fine here. So, and there it is, Sony Computer Entertainment, Crash Bandicoot. So yeah, that should pretty much do it, I think, for this video. That is how you convert your PS1, PSP, and PS2 games to run on the PS4, on a jailbreakable PS4. You can, customize things using different settings, different configs, and also there is a Sega Saturn version, which I didn't show in this video, but it's exactly the same. You just use the, I think it's Sega FPKG from Jabu. You use his tool, and it's the same exact process. All you have to do is just generate the package file with a Sega ROM, Sega Saturn ROM, and you'll be able to run it on the PS4 just like we're able to do with our PSP, PS1, and PS2 games. So yeah, that's it for this one. Hope you guys enjoyed it or found the information useful. If you did, please leave a like and subscribe, and I'll hopefully see you guys in the next one.